This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and for the first time since last March, we're talking about a loss, Shane. It finally happened, and there's a lot to break down here. We have a big show coming up. We'll talk a little football with Barrett Baker. We'll talk a little Texas Tech and make predictions with Joe Lopez of the Tortillas Takes podcast. Because the Texas Tech encyclopedia, as I call him. Mm-hmm. But you and I have a lot to break down here as far as what we saw on Monday night and what it means going forward. So I'm going to get right into it here. You put out a tweet about calling it a bad loss. So I'm going to open buy or sell right off the bat and say buy or sell. After thinking about it, this was a bad loss for Arizona on the road at Allen Fieldhouse.
Okay. I broke one of my own rules that I practice at work or anywhere. If I give myself a few minutes to step away before I send an email or things like that. I need to do the same thing with the tweets. Because I posted it as soon as the game ended. What happened, I saw Darren Peterson wasn't going to be playing in this game. And then Arizona takes an early lead, and my thoughts were going to, okay, well, I figured Arizona was going to win at this point, even though I picked Kansas to win originally. And my thoughts were already had gone to, okay, well, it'd be nice to win this game, and they probably will, but without Darren Peterson, it's like I wish they had been tested more. And then they go on and blow a second half lead. Kansas deserves credit for it. They're playing at Allen Fieldhouse. I get it. So I went out and just tweeted right away that it was a bad loss. Now, I clarified that when I had a little more time to think about it, and I wish this had been my initial tweet, but it was when you say bad loss, I think a lot of people interpret that as like it's going to harm them in the tournament and in the net ranking, and it's like a really nothing like that, obviously. Mm-hmm. I guess I would use the word discouraging and maybe even a little concerning. Maybe not so much the latter, but when I do think now, I will stick with this. I do think without Darren Peterson, Arizona probably should have found a way to win this game.
Yes.
I realize that Kansas is at 38-0 on Big Monday and all that. And Allen Fieldhouse is supposed to be this impenetrable fortress. UConn won there earlier this season, and ASU won there a few years ago. So I know it's a tough place to play, but I don't think it's like this impenetrable place. But I do think it's a game Arizona should have won. With that said, and no, I'm not crazy. They are 23-1. That they have already proven themselves to be one of the best teams in the country. No one is infallible. As we're recording this, Michigan's down double digits at a bad Northwestern team in the second half. Who knows how that game's going to end? So that just goes to show you that everyone's beatable on any given night. So no, bad. It was not the right word. It was a very nondescriptive word, number one. And number two is not really what I intended to say. So, no, it wasn't a bad loss. It was a game, I think Arizona should have won. But, we'll go back to what Casey Jacobson's told us and what Fran Fraschilla has told us about, will a loss or two be good for Arizona potentially down the road? Maybe. And maybe this is the first step there. They were going to hit a bump in the road at some point. You hope those bumps happen in the regular season and not the postseason. Very interested to see how they're going to respond. But bad, it was not the right description for the reasons I just mentioned.
All right. I appreciate you clarifying that. It's a disappointing loss to me. Yes, for everything that you said, I understand where you were going with it. Obviously you don't mind. You like getting into it with people on.
I don't. No, I don't like getting into it, but I'll respond to people. They're respectful. A lot of people said it was a horrible take, and people make great points. And I said, you know what, that's fair. Other people weren't so nice. And those people I tend
you
not
don't acknowledge, right?
I make sure I don't see what they post again.
Yeah, there's a difference in saying, "Hey, I respectfully disagree. That's not a good take." I mean, listen, I disagreed with your take. I'm not going to say, "God, Shane's an idiot." Yeah, I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree with
It's
your
fine.
word choice, but it's fine. You don't agree with a lot of the stuff that I say on here, where I say dumb stuff. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It 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 was what it was. I think people, it was one of those tweets that
It's fine, and
people
I deserve
had
most
fun
of
with
it, and
it.
that's fine. Like I don't, people can say whatever they want. I don't really care. I just say, well, I wish that I had just taken a little more time to be a little more thoughtful about it, and I'm glad I have the opportunity on this platform to do that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's key. So, why did Arizona lose on Monday night, in your opinion?
I think, well, the fact that Kansas went toe to toe with Arizona in the paint, that's not something anyone's done this season with Arizona. We thought even beginning with Florida, which has a very good front court. Arizona has always won the battle inside, and Kansas played them essentially to a draw. And
Yeah.
then they got to the line more often. Arizona got into some early foul trouble, which they navigated. But I think not having Tobe Awaka for a full for as much as you would like in the first half, and then Krivas
Hmm.
gets in the foul trouble in the second half. I think that made Arizona have to play a little more cautiously inside than they would have liked. So that's always a concern. Early foul trouble from one guy or another has been one of the few constant issues for Arizona this season. So that's part of it. And then I think they did play in a very tough place to play. Someone noted in the replies to my tweet that Arizona was up 11 early in the second half. Someone said, in McHale Center, that probably just would have gone up to 20. And I
Hmm.
don't know if it would have gone up to 20, but I certainly don't think Arizona would have let a lead slip at home. So that has something to do with it as well. And Kansas played some very good defense, and Kansas is on a heater right now, like we saw last year
Yeah.
when Arizona wasn't as good last year, but they lost to a BYU team at home, albeit with a very questionable call at the end, that they were better than. I still think Arizona overall is better than Kansas, but Kansas
Yeah,
is on a
yeah.
roll right now, and they're at home, and that's why I picked them to win initially. Again, without Darren Peterson, Arizona probably should have found a way to win, but Kansas has already won a lot of games without him. So I think some of the early foul trouble and being a little more tentative in the paint. Koa Pete disappeared at times. Jaden Bradley didn't show up as much as we're used to, and Kansas was able to pick Arizona apart just enough to hold on. And even with that, Arizona was down 6 with 30 seconds left, and they cut it to a point. They never gave up. So a couple days of digesting it and watching it over again. Arizona played a tough game, but Kansas was just a little bit better.
Do we want to have a conversation about Tony Padilla and the free throw disparity, or do you want
I'd
to ignore
rather
that?
not. I don't want. I don't want to blame this on the officials. I mean, there was the one missed traveling call that was ridiculous, but I
That was
mean,
terrible.
it was really bad. And Kansas went on a run after that. But yeah, and when I saw Tony Padilla's calling the game, I'm gonna roll my eyes. It's like when Scott Foster called a Chris Paul game when he was with the Suns.
Mhm.
So no, but no, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole tonight.
All right, fair. Are you concerned, or I guess buy or sell? There's concern about with this upcoming schedule that Arizona will be able to hold on to that number one seed in the West. I mean, it should. I personally want to see how they respond on Saturday against Texas Tech, and I guess maybe this is a better question after we see what happens with Tech and BYU games
Hmm.
that they should win at home. But I guess your level of concern on a 1 to 10 that Arizona could be in danger of a seed line or two.
10 being the highest level of
Yeah,
concern.
yeah.
Most seasons I would say like a 2 or a 3, but this year because the league is so top heavy, I'd say maybe a 5. Um, most years 23-1 they'd have more wiggle room than they do. This year they have some. And some other teams lost last week, like UConn and Duke. And the only team, as long as Arizona finishes one of the top 4 teams in the country, they'll get the one in the West because the only team that really had a chance to take that away from them was Gonzaga, and then they lost at Portland last week, which was a
Hmm.
horrific loss for them. So that gives them a little more room, but I think Arizona's in a position where, and I'll just say this, and people aren't going to like this either. I think the odds are more likely than not at this point that Houston probably wins the Big 12. Because number one, Houston's got a slightly more favorable schedule down the stretch. And number two, they play Arizona in Houston. That's their only meeting. They're both 10-1 right now. And I've always kind of thought, even with Arizona playing as well as it has, that Houston's still the team to beat just because they have been in recent years in the Big 12.
Right.
Which I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but I just kind of think that way. And now that what's happened this week has sort of reinforced that. I actually think that Houston, my prediction as of now is that Houston will get the 1 seed in the South and Arizona will get the 1 seed in the West. But I think I think Arizona can absorb a couple more losses. They lose at Houston, and they lose one of the tougher home games on their schedule. They'll probably be fine. But if they go down a spiral, which could start Saturday, not predicting it's going to happen at this time, but if they go down that spiral, then yeah, the league is so top heavy that if they do lose a couple more games, then all of a sudden the one seed is in serious question.
All right, I think that's a fair take. Right now, I'm about a three. You lose one of these next two games at B or against BYU and Texas Tech. Obviously, the Red Raiders first. Yeah, then that jumps up significantly. But right now, I'm a 3 out of 10. I'm not. I think Arizona should be the one seed in the West, and I think it's about who the two seed is. Let's get Nebraska or even Purdue. Like I don't think Purdue is very good compared to where they're ranked. I think they're just a team that Arizona could devour if the Wildcats bounce back. So it's all about the bounce back this weekend, and that is what we'll see. All right, let's talk about a couple of quick things here. So the Big 12 Conference and this floor company introduced this whole LED sports floor. Great, it's ahead of its time for the Big 12 tournament. Should we make anything of this, Shane, or is this kind of a waste of time?
It's nice. It's fine. I mean, I think the number one reason why it's being presented is more ad space. You can flip ads in and out, and that's fine. It's nice. I was kind of hoping the big announcement was going to be that they're going to move the tournament move the tournament to Las Vegas, or somewhere closer. But I guess they renewed with Kansas City through the next 5 or 6 years. So that is what it is. But no, it looks nice. The biggest question is, player safety, and I guess it's been tested before. Was it an NBA All-Star game or something like that where that was tested, and so that seems like it's okay. So I guess the word I would use to describe it is fine. And it's not a necessity. It's something that I'm sure is there to generate more ad revenue, which is what it's all about anyway.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool from ad revenue, but otherwise, it's ahead of its time. But what does this really do? Not
Yeah.
much. I don't want to see the McHale Center floor in LED. I don't know if that really does anything for us, but we'll see what it looks like, and then we can kind of talk about it more. The other thing that I want to point out, John Rothstein reported this earlier today, that Purdue and Gonzaga are finalizing an agreement to meet on November 2nd, 2026 at T-Mobile Arena in Vegas.
Hmm.
That's cool. As part of a doubleheader alongside Arizona and UCLA. First game of the season, Wildcats Bruins next year. Do you like or hate?
Love it. Love it. I mean, I don't really care if it's first game of the season or not, but I love that Arizona and UCLA are continuing their rivalry. I mean, in the Pac-12, we've got to a point, I think, where at least one year they only played each other once. So, that when I learned Arizona was leaving the Pac-12, and the Pac-12, as we know it, was dissolving. My biggest disappointment didn't have anything to do with football. It was that, that Arizona UCLA rivalry would end. And I'm glad that it's not ending. I would rather them actually play at each other's home court. I think that would be nice. But no, I'm glad that it's continuing. And my brother-in-law is a Gonzaga Law School grad, lives up in Spokane, so maybe I can convince him to, spend a weekend in Vegas and make it a doubleheader or something. So no, I'm good with it. I like it.
That I think it's very cool. Let's just transition some other quick news in the Arizona world, non-basketball. Brent Brennan got an extension on Friday
Yep.
till 2030. Danny Gonzalez and Seth Dagey got extensions too, albeit I don't think Dagey will stick around long term. Do we buy or sell? Like, we should be happy about this Brent Brennan extension, right?
You know what, Eric, you go ahead, because I feel like I've been talking the whole time. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, I think Brent Brennan did a great job in year two and was worthy of an extension. We'll talk to Barrett Baker about that.
Yep.
I don't think there's any harm in it. He had to make more money. He took a contract that was below market value.
Yep.
And I don't think this hurts the athletic department. It ensures stability, which is a good thing. Is Brent Brennan going to be the next Dick Tomey? No, I don't know about that. But Brent Brennan did a great job in year two. And I think if the Wildcats can make a bowl game and win more games than they lose the majority of years, and maybe, peak here and there once every 5 to 10 years and make a Big 12 championship game and maybe beyond, I think that's great. So you know what? I'm all for it. It was well deserved, and he and his coordinators deserved that.
I agree, 100%. And like I've said so many times that if Arizona could get back to a place where they're consistently like a bowl game is the minimum expectation, And once every few years, they go above and beyond that, compete for a conference championship, and that's great. And I think that's at least seems likely the direction they're headed. Obviously, keeping Seth Diggy and Danny Gonzalez for at least another year is massive. I would still be surprised if Seth is here beyond 2026 because I think he's a rising star. But that's good news. And then the thing I liked the most was the increased pool for assistants because I think that's very important as well. So that's what I was most encouraged to see. Obviously, Brent deserves the extension. I'm glad to see Seth and Danny locked in, at least for this year, hopefully more than that. But yeah, having that money to pay assistants so they don't bolt as quickly as they might otherwise for another program after one good year is very important. So well deserved. Happy for the direction the football program's going, and I'm glad we're excited about it again. I'm glad we're excited about 2026.
All right, one sport that I'm not as excited about going in 2026 is Arizona baseball because they lost their All-American closer, Tony Pluta, who, came back, which was great news, but now he's going to have Tommy John surgery. Don't know when he's going to be able to return.
That sucks.
If he returns as an Arizona Wildcat. So buy or sell, Shane, we kind of have to temper our expectations on this 2026 Arizona baseball team and not kind of put the pressure on Chip Hale once again.
Yeah, well, beyond anything else, I know Chip Hale won't give himself a pass for 2026 because of this. I mean, it's a big loss. Pluta was the 2025 National Stopper of the Year. He was outstanding in regionals and super regionals and helped Arizona get to the College World Series. He locked down North Carolina in that final game to help them get there. Garrett Hicks, it sounds like, will take over the closer role, at least to start the season. He was outstanding at points throughout last year. Actually, my nephew Zach and I got to see him pitch up at Phoenix Muni when they played ASU. And he pitched a great inning and was all fired up. Him and his mustache as he left struck out the last hitter he faced. So, but yeah, it's going to be tough to get back to Omaha. We knew that going in. The coaches ranked Arizona second in the Big 12 going into the season. They do bring back some offensive firepower, and they bring back some good starting pitching as well. But between losing Pluta and then the coaching positions as well, losing some pitching talent there, it's going to be tough. With that said, Arizona lost a lot of star pitching, mostly on the starting side, between 2024 and 25, and they still managed to get to the College World Series last year. So it's hardly impossible. But yeah, if you want to temper your expectations a little bit, I mean, not having him could be the difference between, in 2 or 3 games this year, well, legitimately, where they end up
more than that, Shane. More than that.
Could be
more than that. Yeah. I mean, he was that good, and I think that Pluta, they don't beat North Carolina without Tony Pluta.
Absolutely. Both they got destroyed that first game, and the last 2 were very close, and they don't advance without him. Yep.
And he put the stopper down. So we'll obviously talk Arizona baseball, but I would be surprised if it was anywhere near as fun as it was last year.
Yeah.
With that,
so, I still expect postseason, but okay, of course, when you get to regionals, who knows? I mean, they go to Oregon, and they don't even have to play Oregon to get to super regionals, and then they get blown out in game 1 in Durham or not Durham, but in North Carolina, and then win the next 2. So you just never know.
You never know, right? We didn't do this last week. I failed. I'm not going to fail this week, Shane. It's time for some Shane standouts.
Yeah, well, so I got a couple. The women's tennis team got a pair of wins against UC Santa Barbara and Florida State, and they lost a close match to number 22 Texas Tech last weekend. Ciara Moore, who is a freshman from England, had straight set singles wins in all 3 of those matches. So shout out to Ciara, and hope you get to go home for the summer because if you're anything like my friend in England, his skin turns red once it's like beyond 75 degrees here. So, but congrats to the women's tennis team on a great 3 matches. And then a shout out to a pair of softball players, senior Taylor Beal, who hit a grand slam in Arizona's comeback win over number 3 Oklahoma in Tucson. Arizona lost the series, but they took that game. So, and she was a big reason why. And before that series, senior Jalen Adams, who transferred from Iowa, pitched a no-hitter in her Wildcat debut. Arizona beat Southern Utah 8-0 in 5 innings. Of course, no-hitters are more common in softball. It was the 99th no-hitter in Arizona softball history. So question is, will Arizona get its 100th no-hitter this season? We'll just have to wait and see. But that's what I got for Shane standouts.
That is a very good one, and nice to see softball. Hey, listen, you beat Oklahoma. It's if Caitlin Lowe can make a move here, got to get to Oklahoma City. That's what I think we'll talk about a lot about, her status and I know that some people think she should be on the hot seat. We'll talk more about that as the months go along. I know you and I probably don't necessarily agree with that as much, but we debate everything and anything here on Wildcat Country. Normally I would do an ad read for our friends at Harrah's Auction Casino, but this one I'm going to kind of do impromptu because they were as cool as can be at the Phoenix Open. I had a chance to hang out with them on 3 different occasions at the 16th hole where they, were entertaining VIPs and such. It was a heck of an experience with our buddy Mike Kintner, who we had on the show last week, and then Sam, who does marketing over there. She's wonderful, and others from Harrah's Auction. Just a great group of people. But here's what I want to talk about. They are opening Caesar's Sports Bar. I believe the grand opening is Friday, March 6th. You and I are going to be out there broadcasting tentatively, but it's very likely that we're going to be broadcasting on Selection Sunday. So right after the Arizona and all of March Madness, the NCAA tournament seeds are announced, we're going to break it down. So if you want to come out, place a couple of bets. We can put our Arizona futures out there, play a few table games, and hanging out with Shane and me out there. That would be great. Check that out. Harrah's Auction Casino. We'll talk more about Caesar's Sports Bar up until then and then after that. But we'll hopefully have some giveaways for that in the coming weeks and months. And you got to check that out. Our friends Harrah's Auction Casino in Maricopa. I cannot say enough good things about them. Had a great time out at the Open. I could just go on and on, but there we go. Coming up next, though, it's our buddy Barrett Baker, followed by Joe Lopez and picks here on Wildcat Country. All right, Shane, it's the middle of February, but you know what? We get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is Arizona football with our guy, Barrett Baker, one of the nicest people you will ever meet. We love him on this show, and we like him even more in person because he's just a great guy, and he brought us some good karma at halftime of Arizona and SMU. All right, Barrett. First of all, congratulations. You're a Seahawks fan. You got your Super Bowl there.
We already talked about that off the air.
I would just say it on the air. All right, fair enough.
Gross.
9-4. The bowl game wasn't what we all had hoped. Just your thoughts on the way the season ended and the way the offseason has gone to date.
Well, I think when you really look at the tale of 2 off seasons, we could talk about coming off the last season prior to that and being 4-8. And these were tough times for the Arizona football program with a lot of heat on our athletic director to really pull the plug after 1 year. If you went to certain, if you were on X or social media, there was, just a lot of, I wouldn't call it anger, but just, unhappiness with the football program. But I think Coach Brennan really nailed the offensive hires, the coordinator hires in the off season in regards to Coach Gonzalez and Coach Daggy, and really implemented some solid schemes on both sides of the ball. Then they went out and revamped the roster and brought in 50-plus new players. And early in the season, right, you're still having to learn your personnel as a coach and how to basically implement all of those things and trust the fact that system is working the way that you want it to. And you really saw the evolution of the Arizona football program on both sides of the ball through that, especially the second half of the season. And we were just clicking. And, as we talked about the final game, a tale of 2 halves, and unfortunately we just ran out of time in that particular one. The reality of college football bowls is that the chemistry that got you there, the team that got you there, isn't necessarily the team that plays on that particular day or night. Yep. And that had an impact on us. And SMU had some opt-outs as well. But when you take a look at the 3 guys that did not play in that particular game, obviously a huge impact. But I think fast forwarding through that, so 9-4 and really building some momentum for the program. And now we've taken the next step and, solidifying the coaching staff and extending the coordinators and Coach Brennan. It really just shows that how fast things can change. But I'll tell you, there is not any complacency within the program now, because we've reset and we've got us back to where Arizona football is mentioned in a positive light rather than a negative light. But this is a what have you done for me lately occupation. And it doesn't matter now that we were 9-4 last year, because that's in the history books. And now it's up to this staff to push the right buttons and find the right players to better, match or better what we did last year. And that's really what the focus has been for the last a month and a half since the season concluded.
Barrett, I'm surprised Eric didn't leave with this question. It's by far the most important one. Arizona was shut out in the first half, and yet there was an Arizona Wildcat who found the end zone during the thrifty scoop and score challenge when you and Spencer Larson, I think, both won a year's supply of thrifty ice cream. Just to walk us through how that came about and what it was like to participating in that.
I mean, kind of a crazy story. We were driving over to San Diego, and I had reached out to, Keith and Brad and Brandon Sanders and a few of the guys Jarvie that I knew were from California to kind of find out what they were doing. We were going to go to an alumni event the night before on Friday night. So basically seeing who was representing, and Brandon Sanders had reached out and said, "Are you here?" And I said, "I will be." And he said, "Well, would you be interested in doing an ice cream challenge?" Well, where does your mind go with that? And so I thought, well, I like ice cream. So if you need somebody, then I will help you, or I will help the program, because that's our job, to be ambassadors for the program now. So I didn't really know what we were getting into. When we got a little further into it and I found out I was going to be with Spencer and that there was some sort of obstacle course and we were going against a couple players from SMU, I thought, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but we're going to give it our best. And it was an obstacle course, as you saw. So Spencer Larson or we were going to have to throw a football, knock down something, and then do a little cone drill there from the 35-yard line to get to the end zone first. Well, that was great until I saw the guys from SMU, and I said, "When did you graduate?" He said, "Last year." So I'll be 50 next month, and Spencer's a few years younger than me, but we're both in our mid to late 40s. So I felt a lot of pressure. But things went well that night. Spencer did a great throw to start us off. And then it was just a matter of getting to the end zone. And I mean, as a defensive player, we don't get to the end zone very often. Yeah. So to get there first, it was a good feeling. And now we have a freezer full of ice cream for sure. And I think I will tell you, this sounds very vain, but I did not like what I looked like at that point in time in San Diego, because I was about 20 pounds too heavy. So I have not enjoyed that ice cream yet, because we are in Operation Slim Down 2026 here.
Just an ongoing test of willpower throughout the whole year.
That it is.
Well, but it was awesome to see you guys. That was, again, in all seriousness, that was more or less the highlight of the first half for us. I'm glad the second half was a little more competitive. Like you said, Barrett, definitely a happier offseason than last year, and even certainly 2 years ago when Arizona lost its head coach, retaining Brent Brennan and both coordinators. They did lose two key pieces of the staff, specifically with Alonzo Carter, who was Brent Brennan's right-hand man for going back to San Jose State. Alonzo went to become the head coach at Sacramento State, and then they lost their GM, Guys Crowley, to Arkansas. How big of a deal do you think that's going to be going into this next season?
Sure. Well, I mean, the timing of Geiska and Fletcher Kelly leaving was not ideal for the program, obviously, because that was their job the previous year, to identify who were those 50 newcomers to the program that we could plug and play. And they had a very high hit rate. And so when you talked about Deshaun McKnight and I mean, Hunter, or not Hunter, but Hudson, I mean, you could go on and on about some of the players that they brought in and the impact that they had on the roster last year. So now we've flipped it, correct? And we brought in, and I apologize because I haven't actually met them yet in person, but Captain Morgan, right? Aaron Morgan, I believe, or I'm not sure if I'm right on the first name, but Morgan is our new scouting.
Andrew Morgan.
Andrew Morgan. There we go. So that's our scouting lead, if you will. And then our new general manager, who came from Washington. So he's obviously familiar with the Arizona football program. But I mean, they had to act quick. And again, identify who are those newcomers that were coming to the program. So you're always trying to build through the high school ranks, dabble into the junior college ranks. But the portal now is such a crazy time. and you got 2 weeks to do it now. I mean, there's one window, and it's a 2 or 3 week period where you were bringing all these kids to see if they can do what the previous kids did the last year. So time will tell, right? When spring is upon us here at the end of March or what have you, it's going to be the first look that we have at that roster. But I would say that the staff obviously identified where the weaknesses were in the roster due to graduations or what have you. So, I mean, we brought 7 defensive backs in between the corner and the safety position, obviously needing to replace all 3 starters from the safety spots. But we also lose Dansby. You also lose Garnes from, 2 starters for all intents and purposes from the cornerback position. Cole is back, but we got 1 out of 5 returning defensive backs. The tight end position, we lost Olsen and Barmore. So you have 1 returning tight end. That's Tyler Powell coming off an ACL injury. So they hit the tight end market hard, and they brought in 3 kids there. Again, there's always, the wide receiver position. I think we've got 3 kids that we brought in for the wide receiver position from that. So the coaching staff and the athletic director and the scouting department have to be on the same page. And when you look at who they brought in specifically in the transfer portal, it was on purpose. And now we have to see how that shakes out. So, with losing Riley and Max Harris as well from the linebackers position, again, they brought in 3 transfers that you're looking to plug and play. And I'd say the last thing I would say to that is there's 105 kids on the team. Only 22 of them are starters. So you don't have to bring in kids every single time to be a starter that plays 70 snaps a game. You can bring in somebody to be a third down specialist when it comes to rushing the passer, or again, a slot receiver doesn't have to do that all the time, but can you get somebody that can take the top off of a defense? The one thing I was surprised with was that we didn't hit anything from the defensive line standpoint, and we lost Tia Savea and McKnight, and both of those were, obviously very solid players. But Coach Salavea posted something on his X about 2 weeks ago, and he had the defensive lineman with him at an extracurricular event, and there was 14 kids in that picture with him. And when you got 14 kids plus another kid that's coming in, the junior college kid, that's 15. So they obviously were comfortable with the numbers that they had up front. And then with Coach Gonzalez, he really puts a lot of different variables or a lot of different looks when it comes to defense. And sometimes you might have 2 down linemen, and sometimes you might have 5. So they got a plan in place. And I think at this point they've earned the right to say that they know what they're doing.
Let's talk schedule. Let's talk how you think Arizona is going to do. There's no consecutive road games unlike this season. You have a road trip at Washington State after a road trip at BYU early in the season. What is a reasonable floor for Arizona football in 2026?
You have to get to that 8-win mark, I think, really, to be keeping the momentum going. I think that. I mean, now we've always fallen into this trap, correct? Who do we have coming back? And we obviously like the core of players that we have coming back. But losing Genesis, Dalton, and Traden just from the safety position, those guys played about 96% of the snaps last year. They didn't miss any games because of injury, and that was just shored up the backside. And so we have to be able to identify the players that are going to let Coach Gonzalez call an aggressive game and put pressure on the quarterback and shut down the run. We were able to do that last year because we had a strong back 5. If we don't have a strong back 5 and you blitz or you don't shut down the run, now you get torched in the back. And so, we have to see what we get. Each year is a little bit different. And I think that they have proven that they know how to coach X's and O's, but did we find the right players to be the X's and O's to make sure that the schemes continue to move forward? And offensively, I would say the concern there is that with Tristan Bounds coming back, that was critical for a little bit of continuity, because now we've got Deuced and Bounds on the right side, and that shores that up. We brought in the transfer from Washington to be the center, and we brought in 2 kids from San Jose State and BYU to compete, obviously, on the left side, but losing Chuba at left guard, we've got to find somebody to come in there. So that continuity on the offensive line last year was tremendous, was a huge part of the success that we had on the line because of the continuity. We've got to be able to find 5 guys to stay healthy and play as one. And Coach Oglesby is obviously going to be working hard to make sure that happens because, Coach Daigie can do a lot if we've got time to do it. And, offense is hard if your quarterback's running for his life, even if he's as good as somebody like Noah.
What do you have to say to the people that are not happy about Brent Brennan getting an extension to 2030?
I just would laugh. I mean, I don't know what else you want because I think, again, in today's world with NIL and how money has tainted the whole process and how transactional it has become, then you have to have someone like Brent Brennan on the sidelines shaping the team away from the 60 minutes that's on the field. All the other stuff for the other 9.5 months or 9 months of the season, when you're building a program, that's when you have Brent Brennan that is ensuring that whether we think it's corny or what, but red line, right? We buy into this red line mantra. And every time there's something, the Seattle Seahawks, mission over mob was their calling this year in the professional ranks. So it's not just college, the pros. The Seattle Seahawks, their mantra was MOB, mission over bull blank. Okay, that's how they broke things down. So you always are trying to galvanize and bring 105 kids together to where the chemistry and the team always wins out. And the fact is there are plenty of coaches across this country that know exactly what to do when it comes to X's and O's and are horrific when it comes to chemistry and team building. And what do you think is more important? Because you're talking about 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that are away from home for the first time in their life. They don't have their parents to be the safety net, for lack of a better description. And if you don't have a coach that can fill that void and give your child the ability to grow into a man and learn about life, then we're not doing things right. So that would be my elevator speech to people that are still, negative or, but again, first year, major growing pains. Second year, when he truly did get his ability to put his footprint on the program with hiring coordinators that he had time to vet, and then the chemistry that we saw, it would be crazy to me to think that it's not the right person for this program.
I agree 100% with you, Barrett. But along the lines of what you just talked about, one thing that you told us on one of your many visits with us, and it's always stuck with me, was that you talk about the 98 team that won the Holiday Bowl that you were on, that won 12 games, and the expectations were high the next season. And you said one of the reasons why, and correct me if I'm not remembering this right, but you said one of the reasons why the expectations weren't quite met in 99 was because you lost a lot, not necessarily like a lot in terms of talent, but in terms of leadership on that team. You lost guys who were like natural leaders, whether they played a lot of snaps or not. Based on the guys Arizona's losing, do you think that is that a concern for you, just as much as you've gotten to know that the guys on that team, not just losing talent going into the next season, but losing some of that leadership?
That is, you couldn't phrase the question any better. It's still a little bit of an unknown right now because I can't tell you who the team leaders are. I know that Noah Fafita will be the first person to go in front of a press conference when the team loses and say, that's on me.
Yeah.
Correct? We've heard that. We've 100%. Seen it. And that's not the type of leader that just grows on a tree. So, that is something that we have been blessed with. But is there someone on the team that is going to jump someone's behind when they're dogging it and not giving 100%? And you have to have that guy too. And you have to have the guy that does it right 100% of the time and calls out. And then, so there's so many different types of leadership. And we've talked about that to your point. Kelvin Efon, greatest motivational teammate I have ever seen in my life when it came to the fact that if he gave the team a speech, whether it was a projector being thrown across the room into a screen or,
coin toss.
Yeah. Or a coin toss before a game, we were ready to play anytime, anywhere with him. And it could have been on a blacktop, parking lot. It didn't really matter. He just had that ability. So does this team have somebody that can emotionally capture what it takes to get through a season And do we have the leaders that can keep that level of accountability from their teammates? Because that can't fall to the coaches all the time. You have to have the internal police, for lack of a better description, that know what it takes to win. And then when you call somebody out, are you dismissed or are you respected enough to where you do elevate? And I hope that makes sense what I mean. Because there's some guys, and I can't tell you who on this team, but when you try to take that leadership role, but you're not respected enough, if I could use such a harsh term, by the team, then it doesn't work. So that leadership has to be very organic. It has to be something that the team responds to. And I think that's why Coach Tomey always thought that the team chooses the captains, not the coaches, because the 105 know who the 3, 4, 5 guys are that you believe in. And so but going back to Coach Brennan, this is where he specializes. Yeah. And I think if you look at that's not ever been an issue when it comes to teams that are dysfunctional. Because they've even talked about that, if I could just finish that out. Yeah. They'll bring kids in on these visits. If the players say no, then that's it. It doesn't matter if the kid can do it between the lines for 60 minutes, because he's going to hurt your team for the rest of the entire season / off season. And you can't have that type of cancer on the team.
Yeah, great answer. Yeah, and I remember people said about Coach Tomey, he'd be the first guy to put a foot up your rear end and then an arm around your shoulder. I think is what
I think I had both.
I'm sure you did.
On both sides of that. Yes, yeah, so it's true.
Yeah. All right, last question for you, Barrett. I know Eric likes to ask, when we have Matt Muehlbach on, we'll ask him a question about the football team. So I want to ask you a question about the basketball team. Mm-hmm. And Eric, I guess I'm stealing Eric's thunder. Sorry about that. This team, I mean, aside from the one loss to Kansas, pretty darn good this year. What are your thoughts on this team? Are they finally the ones that bring Arizona back to the promised land?
I think if I just parse your question, I think the most important thing about it is you're talking about the team. And this team is indeed a team that has been enjoyable to watch, because we've got 7 or 8 kids on the squad, and there isn't a Caleb Love this year. So there isn't one person that if they're having an off night shooting, that we're doomed. And so I think that's the beauty of this team, that Bradley has carried the team at certain points, that, Awaka just comes in and does the stuff that is completely necessary from a physical standpoint, rebounding, defense, all of those things. Mo Krivas, what a game, even though in a losing effort. And then the 3 freshmen, I should say, who is going to have an off night? Because even though we lost that game and, 2 or 3 guys didn't have their greatest nights, we're still in that game in a completely hostile environment in which you come up 4 points short. So I think it's probably one of the more exciting teams to watch, just because they are so versatile in how they can beat you. And again, whether it's Burries or Pete or Ivan, who's going to be the one that carries the team when one of the other ones is having an off night. And I just love the unselfish way that they play. So I will bare my soul to the internet here. As a football player, I am one of the rare ones. I don't know if it was jealousy or just resentment, but every time we lost, it was always, well, at least we've got the basketball team. Mm-hmm. And so you can see that's, you become a little soured to that sometimes. Mm-hmm. So as a protectionary measure, maybe I wasn't always on board with basketball like as much as I should have been, but I really do enjoy watching this team. They're fun.
But you know what? I'll just add real quick too, Barrett, is that, Arizona's undefeated, number 1, and we were still talking football all the way through December this past year. So that's a good thing.
If both programs can elevate and do what they're doing this year, it's a special time to be an Arizona Wildcat fan.
All right, Shane, since you stole my question, I get to ask Barrett a crazier question. All right, I'm going to put him on the spot. I'm blaming this one on you. Which is more likely, in your opinion, Barrett? Arizona getting to the national championship game this April in basketball, or Arizona football winning 10 games next season, including a bowl?
I'm a football player through and through, right? I bleed red and blue for life, but I would say this team is a special team for the U of A basketball team right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we have a special team for football. I think that we have to wait and see what it looks like in spring football and how those pieces get put into play for next year before we can really jump into that. but I do strongly feel like this team on the basketball court is primed to really make a run with the depth and coaching that we have. And I think it's going to be a good time again to be an Arizona Wildcat.
Shane, would you agree with him?
Yeah. If I had to pick one, yeah, I think that's especially considering the schedule. I mean, we'll get into it more later in the year, but it's football's got a tough schedule.
Barrett, we love talking football with you. We want to hang out with you more next year at games. When things are better and it's not 24-0 at halftime. Yeah. But great catching up with you. Happy early birthday, a month early to you. And we'll talk to you around spring ball if that's cool with you.
Always, guys. Appreciate you. And bear down for life. Go Cats.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
For our final segment, Shane, we're welcoming back a guy we haven't had a chance to talk to for a year because Arizona didn't play these guys in football this year.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness we did. But next year, we're on the road on Halloween in Lubbock. We'll talk about that. Our guy, Joe Lopez from the Tortillas Takes podcast, joins us to make some picks. Joe, welcome back. I want to start. I know we're in the midst of basketball season. I want to start with football. You guys had an incredible season.
We did.
Unfortunately, lost to ASU, but Morton was hurt. Okay, fine. You get to the playoff. You lose to Oregon. You get shut out. How do you look back on your season? Do you go, wow, what a rousing success, or do you have a bitter taste in your mouth?
I think you could have a little bit of both. I mean, your expectations, and I think if we go back to the last podcast that I did with you guys, I had chose Tech to be at 9-3. That was the floor.
Mm-hmm.
If I recall, I said
that's right.
9-3 is the floor, and then everything after that is house money. I think you whenever you first get to that Big 12 title game and then you win it, you have everything, right? You're like, okay, we've kind of made it to this what is the summit of this particular mountain. So now let's go to a bigger mountain and see how far we could go up this little line and things like that. Obviously, it didn't work out against Oregon, but I think we've addressed some of those issues in this cycle as far as it goes with adding players on the offensive side, starting with Brendan Sorsby as our QB1 moving forward. So I think a lot of the things that hindered Texas Tech in that bowl game itself, I mean, it was pretty obvious. I don't have to, point it out specifically. Anybody who watched that game could kind of figure out kind of where that Achilles heel of this offense was against a top defense as well. And it kind of hurt, but it leaves a little bit of a salty taste in the mouth, but you do want to be back there sooner than later. And I think, they've done the right moves this offseason as well to put, to continue to be back in the college football playoff hunt.
Arizona had some success against Brendan Sorsby when he's at Cincinnati, but I think it might be a different story when next time around. So let me ask you about Texas Tech basketball. A little bit of an up and down season. As we're talking, Texas Tech has a big lead on Colorado at halftime. I'm going to go on a limb and guess that lead is going to hold. Where's Texas Tech basketball relative to your expectations to start the season for you?
It's kind of been up and down, right? You move Christian Anderson to the one after primarily being your two guard last season, not being able to, get the commitment from Kingston Flemings. He was down between Texas Tech and Houston, and ultimately chose Houston over Texas Tech. And what Coach McCaslin's been able to do is move Christian Anderson from the 2 to the 1. And I think it had its early growing pains. You're moving somebody who is primarily, shoot first and then, worry about the assists after the fact. And now it took him a few games, more than a few games, to kind of get acclimated into that role. And he's kind of taken over. I mean, he leads the Big 12 in assists right now He's a great distributor, and then whenever he needs to take over a basketball game, he'll take over the basketball game. But given the state of the Big 12 and the hierarchy, 1 through 5 being so tough, I mean, to see where they're at currently, I think you could live with that because you're going to win some games and you're going to lose some games. That's just the Big 12 conference for you. So I think where they're at, they're still in prime position to make a late push. But it's starting right now against Colorado, but the big test is obviously going to be at McKell on Saturday.
Before we make our actual predictions for the game, just from a Tech fan's perspective, what are a couple of must-haves for Tech on Saturday in terms of just like this is if Tech's going to pull off the upset in Tucson, what has to happen?
Well, this is a tough ask, and it's a very, very tough ask, and it's going to be rebounding. And we've talked about this the multiple times that Arizona and Texas Tech have headed to the hardwood to play each other. Rebounding has been almost the deciding factor in all of these games. You have height, you have length, you have big guys, and for Texas Tech, getting acclimated to, it's kind of weird that we're kind of getting a refresher with this offense so late in the season because Texas Tech finally has a healthy roster. Bamboye is finally healthy. Josiah Mosley is finally healthy. And, we're already almost halfway into the Big 12 slate, and we're barely finally starting to have our full team, at our disposal. And Coach McCaslin working with, rotations and how you're going to get guys in. I think ultimately that'll help you down in the Big 12 tournament and come March. But as of right now, I still think you're kind of working through some things as an offense and as a team is collectively. So I think rebound is obviously going to be the big one. We're going to have to get some different scoring outside of Toppin and Anderson. Jalen Petty, Donovan Atwell, some of these guys who have, exploded at different points in times during the season. One of those guys is going to have to step up, or even somebody off of the bench to kind of spell either Christian Anderson and or JT Toppin.
Joe, what we expect from Arizona is that the Wildcats at least make the Final Four and if not higher. What are your current expectations? It's what we expect, Shane.
Yeah.
What are your current expectations for the Red Raiders, this year's team?
Early on in the season, on paper, and I've been around this basketball program and I've had that luxury over the last few seasons. I thought this year may take a step back from the Elite Eight last year, somewhere in the Sweet 16 area. But as the season progressed, I think there's the game against like a Duke that you come back and win in Madison Square Garden. The game here in Lubbock a couple weeks back, whenever you give it back to Houston. I mean, this team has the makings to make it to the Final Four, but I just don't think at this time, right now as we speak, that it's been consistent enough for me to say right now that they're an Elite Eight or better basketball team. But they're a good basketball team, and when they're humming, they're humming. But as it sits right now, like I said, the consistency hasn't been there. They've had trouble closing out games late. I mean, I give the Kansas one a pass because of the Darren Peterson just kind of doing what the projected number one overall pick is supposed to do and hitting those two big threes there late in the game. Then in Houston, whenever Kingston Flemings kind of took over that game late there, I mean, you could kind of live with that because those are dudes, right? Those are really good top 10 lottery pick kind of guys, and they're beating you. But in some of these other games, I believe earlier on in the season when we played Colorado, had a nice hefty lead there, and we were Tech allowed them back into that game and made it way closer than it would have liked to be. And I just believe that there's still kinks in that, but that's also because of the team not being at its full strength. So, I mean, I think they're a good basketball team, and I do believe that they could turn it on at any point in time, but it just hasn't been consistent enough for me personally to think that they're going to be anything more than a Sweet 16 team.
Last one before we get to a pick.
Okay.
What is your perception of Arizona from what you've seen of our Wildcats this season?
Man, y'all are good. I've seen Koa Pete play a handful of times prior to him even arriving to Arizona, and I wish I had you guys were coming to Lubbock so I could watch it in person, because I know that he'll be on an NBA court sooner rather than later. He's a guy. Um, Overall, I mean, it's you have the perfect combination of age and youth that kind of go back and forth from each other. You have Koa Pete and Burries, both freshmen. Then you have Awaka, and you have the other point guard. I always forget his name.
Jaden Bradley.
Jaden Bradley, the Alabama transfer. Those guys like that. You have a perfect combination of mixture, and they're all athletes. And you can't forget about a Toby Awaka kind of guy, who just goes down and eats up boards like, Rodman in the 90s. It's a masterclass to watch what he does there. I mean, he's a very physical guy, and playing in the Big 12, you have to be as physical as you could be. And it does look like Arizona has all the makings to make a serious run this year.
All right, let's make some picks. Saturday, I'm going to start, and then we'll go along here. All right. This game concerns me. Shane, you and I talked about it earlier in the show. How does Arizona respond to what happened against Kansas?
Yep.
I think this game's going to be close. We saw Arizona and Texas Tech have some battles last season. I expect it, to be gut-wrenching. You and I will be there, thanks to our buddy Jeff Dean. So thank you for that, for the tickets. I'm looking forward to being down there for this game. I think this game is a nip and tuck game, but Arizona pulls ahead late, hits a few free throws, wins the game by 6. It's closer than a lot of people want to admit. Joe, what do you think?
That's kind of right on the spot where I'm at. I think we're going to keep it interesting until it's not interesting. And that's when, some of those players like Burries, Bradley, or Koa Pete's going to, we've had trouble. Texas Tech has had trouble over the course of the season with some of the bigger lineups. You guys also have the 7-2 guy in
Krivas. Yep.
Krivas, and we don't. Luke Bamboya is our biggest guy, and he's 6'11". He's an athletic dude. So in order to keep this game interesting enough, you're going to have to get big games out of Toppin. Some of our big guys are going to have to stretch the floor. Toppin, Watts, they're going to have to either hit some threes, get some of those bigger guys out on the 3-point line and work their way inside out, use their athleticism to get to the hole. If you're shooting threes with Toppin and Watts and you're not knocking down those threes, then this is a very, very hard game to keep up with the size and the athleticism that the Wildcats have. I don't think that Tech has enough right now. Maybe in a couple weeks, as the full roster starts getting acclimated with each other a little bit more on the offense and the defensive side, I think it'll be a little bit closer of a matchup. But I have the Wildcats winning by 8.
All right, Arizona by 8. Shane, you heard Joe. Just be more optimistic than me. Where do you fall in this?
Well, last week was kind of an echo chamber because you, me, and Mike Kittner all pick Kansas to win a close game, and unfortunately, we were all correct. I think this is going to be.
By the way, Mike hit it on the number by 4. So good job,
Oh,
Mike.
wow.
You wanted me to give him a shout out for that. So there you go. But go ahead.
There you go, Mike. Congratulations. But I'm going to parrot most of what you said, Eric. I'm very interested and probably like you, a little nervous to see how Arizona responds after its first loss of the season, especially coming as late in the season as it has. They could come out clicking on all cylinders and play their best game of the season, play angry, or they could come out shaky with their confidence rattled for the first time this year. Considering how many freshmen are on the team, I think it's going to be more the latter. But I've seen it in person, we've seen it on TV, Eric, how many times the McHale Center crowd has been able to help will Arizona to victory, drag them past the finish line when they're not at their best, even against very good teams like Texas Tech. I think, like the Kansas game, the result will largely be determined by, I think, a lot of it by foul trouble, especially early in the game. Texas Tech is a very talented team, and they're getting some depth back, but it's a process. I think they depend more on their stars than Arizona does. Now, JT Toppin's capable of putting up 30 and 15 on any given night. Christian Anderson is one of the best three-point shooters in the conference. But as a team, I think Tech is very average in rebounding margin, and I think, again, injuries are a part of that. But if Arizona's bigs can get Texas in some early foul trouble and avoid that, like Toby Awaka got 2 early fouls against Kansas, I think it's a situation where Arizona can pull away late in what's a very nerve-wracking game. If Top and Anderson go off, all bets are off. But I think Arizona finds a way to win. I had 6 points, Eric. I'll be slightly more pessimistic than you. I'll say 75-70. Arizona wins by 5 at McHale.
75-70. All right, that's fair. Now, Joe, you saw Arizona's opponent after Texas Tech, BYU. You saw them in person in Lubbock, and the Red Raiders kind of dismantled BYU, won by 13. What did you make of the Cougs?
I think we broke them. I mean, they haven't kind of been right since that loss. I mean, it's just been really hard for them to get their footing. And not saying that they're a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that there's a blueprint to beat them, right?
Yeah.
It's not you have to just do this or you not have to do this. I mean, Diabonsa could get his points and you could still come out and win that game by 10 plus points. He's a young kid. He's been getting in his own head a lot too, taking some ill-advised shots that a young player would do, because he's relying a whole lot on talent alone. Richie Saunders' points per game has dropped in this losing streak as well. I mean, a lot of these players that were playing really good basketball up until the Tech game have kind of regressed a little bit. Now, does that hurt them long term? Maybe. Can they right the ship? Of course. They have AJ DeBonsa, the second best player in the country on their basketball team, and they could get rolling just like Texas Tech can once they start getting win after win, building a little bit, stacking a little bit of that success. All bets are off. But I believe they're a really good team. I just do think they're just kind of in a tough patch right now. Big 12 basketball.
The thing is, though, Joe, they just don't beat ranked teams. I mean, they are like against ranked teams this year. They beat Wisconsin, who, okay, that's right after they lost to UConn by 2, so they're 1-1.
Right.
Then they lost to you guys, 1-2, lost to us, 1-3, lost to Kansas, lost at Houston. They're 1-5, and now they'll play Colorado, who you guys are mopping up on as we speak, and then they come to Tucson. How many points does Arizona win that game by next week?
I'm taking Arizona by 10 points.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. So I'm going to stick with that. I just, very simple. BYU doesn't beat good teams. And until they do, I can't pick them to do that. Am I concerned about Arizona? Yes. Normal Arizona teams, I think, would falter and lose one of these two games against Texas Tech or BYU. But I think this team is different. I think they will lose next week at Houston. We'll talk about that on next week's episode. In the meantime, I think Arizona finds a way to go 2-0 at home. So Arizona by 10, Joe and I agree. Shane, what do you say?
Well, the echo chamber is going to keep on rolling here. BYU's defense has become a big liability. We even saw it against Baylor the other night when BYU won, but I think Baylor scored 90. I think, assuming Arizona isn't riding a 2-game losing streak heading into this game, I think that they build a lead similar to what they did in Provo a couple weeks ago, but this time they don't let it slip away and don't take 10 years off our lives. Even though BYU is one of the best second half teams in the country. And we saw that in their first game. But I think Arizona is just a little bit better, especially on defense. I'll take Arizona again. I'll be slightly more pessimistic and take Arizona by 9 over the Cougars. And I hope, and I'll just say this too. I hope the fans, specifically the students, are more respectful to BYU than they were last time they were in Tucson, because that kind of stuff's got to stop. But I think Arizona, just the way BYU's playing right now, last year when they came into Tucson, they were on a heater. It's kind of the other way around this time. I think Arizona wins that game.
Joe, we opened with football and we're going to close with football. You were correct about Texas Tech. The last time we had you on, you thought, the floor would be 9-3, obviously 11-1, 12-1, and then, Oregon happened in the Orange Bowl. How good are you guys going to be next year? What's your initial record projection?
I'm at undefeated going. Just how the schedule's set up. I mean, it's not, I don't want to be a homer by any stretch of the imagination, but if you look at Texas Tech's schedule for this upcoming season, and I get it, a lot of people will bash on it, but this schedule was set way before NIL actually started to matter, between Abilene Christian, Oregon State, things like that. It's a very, very favorable schedule. Just depending, I guess, would be play on Sorsby. A lot's going to be on riding on him. We loaded up on the defensive side in the trenches. We replaced a all Big 12 and all American linebacker with Romaine out of Kansas State, he's just a baller. We added some guys in the trenches, and as far as depth goes, with the recruiting class that we have coming in and what we added via the transfer portal on the defensive side, it's almost scary to say that our defensive front will be better as a whole unit as just our front four was this last season with Height, Lee Hunter, Skylar Gill Howard, AJ Holmes, and David Bailey, because we'll be able to hit a couple different waves. We have a 5-star coming in from Georgia and LaDamian Guyton, on the defensive edge side. So he'll be a part of that rotation. And Shield Wood is just a master class of a defensive coordinator, and how he gets some of these guys set back up. Our defense is going to be probably, if better than last season, and that's going to be a tough ask. But like I said, on the offensive side is where we hope to bank on getting those tougher wins and having Sorsby making some of those tougher throws that Barron was unable to make for us, when it counted.
Well, Joe, we loved catching up with you. We're going to talk to you. I mean, who knows if Arizona plays Texas Tech sometime in March? I have a feeling we may. There's a good chance. Wouldn't shock me in the Big 12 tournament. I also want to thank our buddy Barrett Baker for joining us in the previous segment. For Joe Lopez of the Tortillas Takes podcast, check that out. This guy is a Texas Tech encyclopedia. Can't get enough. Joe, great job. Call him for an undefeated season next year. We'll talk a lot about that and have you on, of course, before Halloween when the Wildcats and Red Raiders meet up. So for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.